The Sengoku period of Japan was a century of turmoil and incessant warfare. Feudal lords, known as daimyo, vied for power in a fractured landscape of shifting alliances and betrayals. Among these powerful figures, Oda Nobunaga emerged as a formidable unifier, driven by a ruthless ambition to bring the nation under his singular control. His primary rival in the mid-16th century was the formidable Takeda clan, renowned for possessing the most powerful and feared cavalry in all of Japan. The Takeda were masters of traditional samurai warfare, their mounted warriors a seemingly unstoppable force on the battlefield. Takeda Shingen, the clan's legendary leader, had been a persistent thorn in Nobunaga's side for years. However, by 1575, Shingen was dead, and his less experienced, but still ambitious son, Takeda Katsuyori, had taken command. Katsuyori, eager to prove himself a worthy successor, embarked on a campaign to solidify and expand his father's domain. His strategy led him to lay siege to Nagashino Castle, a modest but strategically vital outpost controlled by the Tokugawa clan. Tokugawa Ieyasu, a patient and cunning ally of Oda Nobunaga, found his territory directly threatened by Katsuyori's aggression. The small garrison at Nagashino held out bravely, but their supplies dwindled rapidly under the relentless pressure of the Takeda army. A desperate plea for aid was sent to both Ieyasu and his powerful partner, Nobunaga. A brave samurai named Tori Sunimon undertook a perilous mission, sneaking through the siege lines to deliver the message. He successfully reached Nobunaga, who saw a golden opportunity not just to save the castle, but to confront and crush the Takeda clan once and for all. Nobunaga, a known innovator fascinated by new technologies, had been steadily amassing a vast arsenal of arquebuses, a type of matchlock firearm introduced by the Portuguese. He understood that these weapons, though slow to reload and inaccurate individually, could be devastating when used in large numbers. He mobilized a massive combined army with Tokugawa Ieyasu, marching towards Nagashino with a force that vastly outnumbered the besieging Takeda. The combined Oda Tokugawa army numbered around 38,000 men, a truly colossal force for the era. Among them was a contingent of at least 3,000 ashigaru, or foot soldiers, armed with the game-changing arquebuses. Takeda Katsuyori, upon hearing of the approaching relief force, faced a critical decision. His veteran advisors urged caution, suggesting a strategic withdrawal to fight another day on more favorable ground. However, fueled by pride and overconfidence in his cavalry, Katsuyori chose to meet the enemy head-on. He lifted the siege of Nagashino and moved his army of approximately 15,000 to the plain of Shitaragahara, preparing for a decisive open-field battle. He believed his elite cavalry could easily shatter the Oda Tokugawa infantry lines, just as they had done countless times before. Oda Nobunaga, however, had no intention of fighting a traditional battle. He carefully selected his ground, positioning his troops with a small river, the Rangogawa, protecting their rear. The terrain was marshy and uneven, subtly hindering the effectiveness of a massed cavalry charge. His most revolutionary tactic, however, was the construction of extensive wooden palisades, a series of staggered stockades to protect his arquebusiers. These barricades would break the momentum of the charging horses and create a protected kill zone for his gunners. Nobunaga also organized his firearm units with meticulous detail, arranging them in 3 rotating ranks. This system would allow one rank to fire while the next prepared to shoot and the third reloaded their weapons. The result was a continuous, rolling volley of gunfire, a terrifying innovation in an age accustomed to the ebb and flow of sword and spear combat. The morning of the battle dawned, shrouded in a tense mist. The air was thick with anticipation as two of Japan's most powerful armies faced each other across the plain. The Takeda forces were a magnificent sight, their red banners and polished armor gleaming in the early light. Their samurai commanders, legendary names like Yamagata Masakaja and Baba Haru, were veterans of 100 battles. They held the Oda Ashigaru in contempt, viewing them as mere peasants with noisy, unreliable toys. Confident in their martial superiority, the Takeda generals ordered the first charge. Ground began to tremble as thousands of hooves thundered across the field, a wave of steel and fury aimed directly at the Oda center. The mounted warriors shouted their battle cries, expecting the enemy line to break and flee in terror. As they closed the distance, the first rank of Nobunaga's arquebusiers took aim from behind their wooden shields. A single command was given, and a deafening roar erupted from the Oda lines, a sound unlike any heard before on a Japanese battlefield. A massive cloud of acrid white smoke instantly obscured the view. When it cleared, the devastation was shocking. The front ranks of the Takeda cavalry were in ruins, a tangled mess of fallen men and screaming, wounded horses. The charge had been stopped dead in its tracks, hundreds of yards from the palisades. Deterred, and perhaps enraged by this initial repulse, the Takeda commanders ordered another charge. Again the cavalry surged forward, and again they were met with a disciplined, coordinated volley of lead shot. The cycle repeated itself throughout the day, a grim testament to Katsuyori's stubborn refusal to adapt. The famed Takeda cavalry, the pride of the clan, charged again and again into the meat grinder of Nobunaga's creation. Each wave was systematically broken and annihilated by the relentless gunfire. The wooden stockades proved brutally effective, preventing the few horsemen who survived the volleys from reaching the arquebusiers. The Takeda's most celebrated and experienced generals fell one by one, cut down in the futile assaults. Yamagata Masakaja, known as the Red Devil for his fierce armor and fighting spirit, was shot from his horse. Baba Nobuharu, a wise veteran who had advised against the battle, fought valiantly before being overwhelmed. Morale of the Takeda army began to crumble as they witnessed their invincible heroes being slaughtered by low-born foot soldiers. The disciplined ranks of the Oda Tokugawa forces held firm, their continuous fire never wavering. The noise was incessant, a constant thunder of explosions that shook the very air. The smell of gunpowder and blood filled the valley, a sensory nightmare for the attacking samurai. Takeda Katsuyori watched in horror from his command post as his elite army was systematically dismantled. The flower of Takeda chivalry was being cut down without ever having a chance to draw their swords against their main opponents. By the afternoon, the Takeda army was a shattered remnant of its former glory. Thousands lay dead or wounded on the blood-soaked plain before the Oda fortifications. Seeing the enemy broken, Nobunaga finally ordered his own forces to advance. Ensuing pursuit turned the Takeda retreat into a complete rout. Takeda Katsuyori barely managed to escape with his life, fleeing back to his home province with only a handful of his retainers. The Battle of Nagashino was over, and it had been a slaughter of unprecedented scale. The Takeda clan lost over 10,000 men, including most of its senior leadership and veteran warriors. Their military power was irrevocably broken, and they would never again pose a serious threat to Nobunaga's ambition. The victory was a stunning validation of Oda Nobunaga's vision and his willingness to embrace new military technology. The battle marked a pivotal turning point in the history of Japanese warfare. It demonstrated, with brutal clarity, the supremacy of massed firearms over the traditional samurai cavalry charge. The age of the sword and the horse, as the ultimate arbiters of battle, was coming to an end. The era of the gun had begun. Nagashino signaled the rise of the Ashigaru foot soldier from a secondary role to the core of Japanese armies. A well-drilled peasant with an arquebus could now defeat a noble, highly trained samurai warrior. This shift had profound social and political implications, accelerating the breakdown of the old feudal order. Oda Nobunaga's innovative tactics at Nagashino would be studied and copied by other daimyo across Japan. The demand for firearms skyrocketed, and gunsmiths became essential artisans in the war economy. Fortifications and castle designs also had to be rethought to withstand the power of cannon and arquebus fire. The battle cemented the alliance between Oda Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu, a partnership that would be crucial in the final stages of Japan's unification. For the Takeda clan, Nagashino was a catastrophe from which they would never recover. A few years later, the Oda-Tokugawa alliance would invade and completely destroy the Takeda domain, extinguishing one of Japan's most ancient and noble families. The echoes of the gunfire at Nagashino reverberated through the rest of the Sengoku period. It was a brutal lesson in the changing nature of power, where innovation and adaptation triumphed over tradition and valor. The image of the mighty Takeda cavalry charging to its doom against a wall of smoke and lead became a defining symbol of this new era of warfare. The battle was not just a military victory. It was a revolution fought and won in a single day. The souls of the fallen samurai on that bloody plain bore silent witness to the end of their world. The future of Japan would be forged not by the flashing blade of a katana, but by the thunderous report of a gun. The strategic genius of Oda Nobunaga had forever altered the art of war in the land of the rising sun. His victory was a clear message that the old ways were no longer sufficient to rule. The path to unification was now open, paved by the bodies of the Takeda's finest. The sacrifice of Tori Sunemon, who was captured and executed after his mission, was not in vain. His loyalty had set the stage for one of history's most decisive confrontation. The wooden palisades, simple in design but brilliant in application, became legendary. They represented a new way of thinking about defense and battlefield control. The Rengogawa River, a minor stream, played its part as a silent, unyielding guardian of the Oda flank. The Ashigaru gunners, once looked down upon, had become the new heroes of the battlefield. Their discipline and courage under pressure had won the day against fearsome odds. The Takeda's reliance on a single, powerful tactic proved to be their fatal flaw. Katsuyori's inability to adapt his strategy in the face of a new threat sealed his army's fate. Battle's legacy is a reminder that military dominance is never permanent. Technology and tactics are in a constant state of evolution, and those who fail to keep pace are left behind. The name Nagashino became synonymous with a paradigm shift in military history. It stands alongside battles like Agincourt and Crécy, where new weapons and tactics toppled an established martial order. The story of the battle is a dramatic saga of ambition, innovation, and the brutal realities of war. It captures the essence of the Sengoku period, a time of violent change and radical transformation. The fall of the Takeda was a somber moment, the end of a proud and powerful lineage. Defeat was a necessary step, however, in the long and bloody process of Japan's unification. Oda Nobunaga's star was now in its ascendancy, his power nearly absolute. Tokugawa Ieyasu, having played his part, would wait patiently in the wings for his own opportunity to rule. The battlefield of Shitaragahara is now a quiet place, but the memory of the thunderous volleys and the clash of armies remains. It is a site that marks the birth of modern warfare in Japan. The revolution that began at Nagashino would continue to shape the nation's destiny for centuries to come. The courage of the Nagashino castle defenders who held out against impossible odds was the spark that ignited the flame. The overconfidence of Takeda Katsuyori was the wind that fanned it into a conflagration. Meticulous planning of Oda Nobunaga was the steady hand that directed the fire. The volley fire technique was the core of this new military doctrine. The sight of one rank firing while another reloaded was a terrifying spectacle of efficiency. The psychological impact on the Takeda samurai must have been immense. Their entire worldview and martial training were rendered obsolete in a matter of hours. They were warriors trained for close combat, facing an enemy who killed from a distance. The battle was a brutal, impersonal affair, a departure from the ritualized combat of the past. Individual heroism meant little against a hail of lead shot. The smoke from the thousands of arquebuses created a fog of war, adding to the chaos and confusion. Takeda horses, not accustomed to such noise, would have been panicked and difficult to control. The choice of terrain by Nobunaga was a masterstroke of defensive strategy. He turned the landscape itself into a weapon against the Takeda's greatest strength. The staggered layout of the palisades was designed to funnel and disorient the attackers. This prevented the cavalry from building up a full, cohesive charge. The battle was a victory of intellect and preparation over brute force and tradition. Nobunaga had outthought his opponent long before the first shot was fired. The defeat shattered the myth of the invincible samurai cavalry. It proved that a well-equipped and disciplined infantry could stand against any charge. The political fallout was as significant as the military result. Nobunaga's power and influence grew exponentially after the victory. Other daimyo were forced to acknowledge his dominance and the effectiveness of his methods. The battle accelerated the centralization of power in Japan. The era of countless warring clans was drawing to a close. The cost in human life was immense, a stark reminder of the brutality of the period. The field was littered with the bodies of men who were masters of a dying form of warfare. The story is often told as a triumph of modernity, but it is also a tragedy for the vanquished. The Takeda clan's legacy was forever stained by this single, catastrophic defeat. The bravery of individual Takeda warriors in the face of certain death was still remarkable. They upheld their code of honor even as their world crumbled around them. The battle serves as a powerful case study in military innovation. It highlights the importance of being willing to abandon outdated methods. Nobunaga's willingness to trust and elevate common soldiers was a key to his success. He recognized that talent and discipline were more important than noble birth. The arquebus itself was a crude and imperfect weapon. But in Nobunaga's hands, it became the tool that reshaped a nation. The sound of the battle would have carried for miles, a terrifying announcement of a new order. The local peasants would have hidden in fear, listening to the thunder of war. Aftermath of the battle left a scene of utter carnage. Cleaning the battlefield would have been a gruesome and lengthy task. The victory at Nagashino gave Nobunaga the freedom to pursue his campaigns in other regions. It removed the most significant military threat to his power base. Tokugawa Ieyasu learned valuable lessons from the battle, which he would later apply in his own rise to power. He saw firsthand the power of firearms and careful planning. The story of Toriya Suniman became a celebrated tale of samurai loyalty and sacrifice. His actions were a crucial catalyst for the entire engagement. The siege of Nagashino Castle itself was a dramatic episode of endurance and defiance. Small garrison stand against the mighty Takeda army was an act of incredible bravery. The final moments of the Takeda generals are the stuff of legend. They faced their end with the stoicism expected of a true samurai. The battle was a complex event with many contributing factors. It was not just about guns, but also about leadership, logistics, and psychology. The memory of Nagashino is preserved in countless books, plays, and films. It continues to capture the imagination as a moment of profound historical change. The battlefield is now a historical park, where visitors can reflect on the events of that fateful day. Markers indicate where the great armies stood and where the palisades were built. The legacy of Nagashino is a testament to the idea that no single way of fighting lasts forever. The only constant in warfare is change itself. The revolution in Japanese warfare was swift and decisive. The lessons learned at Nagashino were quickly integrated into all subsequent conflicts. The battle was a microcosm of the larger changes sweeping through Japan. The old feudal system was giving way to a more centralized, modern state. Oda Nobunaga did not live to see the final unification of Japan. He was betrayed and assassinated a few years later. But his victory at Nagashino laid the essential groundwork for the peace that would follow. Tokugawa Ieyasu would ultimately complete the task of unification, establishing a shogunate that would rule for over 250 years. The seeds of that long peace were sown in the bloody soil of Shitaragahara. The Battle of Nagashino remains one of the most significant and studied battles in Japanese history. Its impact was felt not just on the battlefield, but across the entire fabric of Japanese society. It was the day the gun truly conquered the sword.